Hey everybody, this is Bullets Academy, and we're going to be doing some talking about breaststroke today. We've did the talk last week about the women's 200 fly race where Misty Hyman upset Susie O'Neill down in Australia. And today I thought we'd mix it up a little bit. Want to introduce Dave Denniston. Dave is the coach at University of Wyoming, and something I was reading up a little bit about you. I did not know you were actually from Wyoming, and
Yep.
but Dave swam in the '04 and '08 trials. Is that correct?
No, 2000,
2000 and
2004
2004
trials.
trials.
And then
Swam for
08, I
Auburn,
went to
multi-time All-American swimmer, breaststroker. Swam on U.S. teams and things like that. Was a world-class breaststroker, and so I thought it'd be interesting to bring him in and talk a little bit about his breaststroke and his thoughts on the stroke. Dave, you still have the distinction of being the only swimmer to swim in the Olympic trials and the Paralympic trials?
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
So Dave had a sledding accident in '05, and he was paralyzed. So we're also going to talk a little bit about that. As many of you probably know, my daughter was also paralyzed through different events, but it's created some parallels in our lives. And so we've had an opportunity to talk a little bit about that. And so I think it'd be interesting to talk about the adversity you have had in your life, and maybe things you can share with our athletes about how they can cope with the adversity they're going through right now. So anyway, so I'm going to let you go ahead and just kind of talk a little bit. I'll ask some questions and interject, but just how things going in Wyoming. And I think speaking of breaststrokers, you coached one of our former breaststrokers for Academy Bullets, Molly Kuntz, and you just had one of our backstrokers, Tyler Clack, graduate. I don't know if you still swim in backstroke for you at the end, but
he's really fast at backstroke and really good IM as well. But no, thanks. I love getting to just talk to you, Bill, regardless of the scenario, the situation. But that's one of the best things about this time right now is being able to do this. I guess, breaststroke's such a broad topic, and it's probably the most broad topic for any stroke out there because everybody does it different. And there's so many variables. It's kind of funny in this scenario right now. My wife and I actually pulled out the old Wii Nintendo console, and we've been playing Mario Kart. And I noticed, because you forget these things, but when you pick a kart on Mario, it lists all its strengths of acceleration, speed, turning, all those things. And I think breaststroke is a lot of that same way. You almost have to pick your kart based off your body. And a lot of times you're giving up some power to be more efficient, or your kick isn't as strong as your pull, or your timing and the length and distance per stroke you take versus a high tempo. All those variables are very different for everyone. And I think there's some things that have evolved over the last few years. But in terms of just stroke uniqueness, I still can't say that there is one right way to swim breaststroke, because the right way is going to be different based on everybody's body type.
I totally agree with that. I was thinking about that today. I was thinking about, you look at Adam Peaty. I mean, he's so strong, so powerful. He grabs so much water, but he still has that quick tempo. And then you look at Kevin Cordes, who's our current American record holder and actually is from our area. Kevin is at that long stroke. And I was thinking today, what if Adam Peaty had Kevin Cordes' length, or if Kevin Cordes had that strength, like that would be probably be a 54-second breaststroker. I don't know, but it is amazing how the different types the different body types dictate what type of breaststroker you'll be.
For sure. And I think one of the things you also notice is one of the things with me and the taller breaststrokers like Adam Peaty is we're actually never going to be able to get out as much of a powerful kick as, say, a shorter breaststroker. Just because of the angles. With longer legs like Petey and myself, if you brought your heels up as high as most breaststrokers do, your feet are coming out of the water, and then you're kicking air. So what Petey found, what I found, what a lot of the taller breaststrokers found is just having a smaller, narrower kick and relying a little bit more on tempo was a faster way of swimming than, say, what Kevin does, where he's pretty balanced between his kick and his pull, and he's working on his timing and distance per stroke together versus relying on tempo as much. It's kind of what makes, I think, coaching breaststroke and being a breaststroker one of the most fascinating things.
Oh, I agree. It is interesting. When you watch Adam Peaty's breaststroke, it's almost like he's doing a half kick. It's like also it's just where you think he's going to bring his heels up a little bit more, bang, snaps that kick out, and it is interesting. And I totally agree. I think that we we've some of the breaststrokers I've worked with over the years, and you almost have to kind of mold it to not only their body type, almost their personality too, like what they're comfortable doing. And some breaststrokers just want to come up higher out of the water, and some want to stay lower, and the variations there. I think you got to kind of move in a different direction. Jessica Wagner, when she came over to our club, Jessica just had a high tempo, and we went to war over her breaststroke and getting her to lengthen that stroke back out. And it took a while, and it took a lot of arguing, but and a lot of frustration on her part. But she finally figured out and was much better for it. And she just developed some bad habits, and once we got her to break those out, but there was it is interesting that, but I just really believe that if she lengthened out that stroke and grabbed more water, that she could be much more effective than she was.
And I think that's a hard lesson for anybody to learn, because the way I grew up and the way a lot of swimmers grow up is, and it's kind of how the sport evolved. If you can work harder than the person next to you, you're going to win. So there's kind of an early habit that's inset in your system of, okay, this is my race, I got to outwork everybody. And in breaststroke, that's not the case. I mean, you really don't really work till the last 50 probably, and trusting your length and trusting that glide is such an important factor of the stroke. It's something that Ed Moses was, in my opinion, took to a new level. Somebody that I raced a lot. And it's kind of fun to look at the history of how breaststroke evolved from swimming with your head up above the water the whole time, like Glenn Mills used to have to do, in the 80, 84, he talks about that. And Steve Lundquist and the way he kind of was able to push his head even lower and have that flatter body line. And then you see Barrowman, who's tiny, who should probably be a gymnast. But he's holding more body or distance per stroke than most of the guys that were 6 feet, and some of those bigger guys. And I think when you look at that, then you're like, okay, breaststroke's really a stroke for anyone. It's fascinating because I got to live through part of it, but Barrowman, for a lot of the people in my generation, everybody looked up to Mike Barrowman, but he also developed the medicine ball workout routine, which right now is something I think a lot of people are starting to get familiar with again, is how to throw a med ball, how to do some of the dryland things. But he really showed you how doing those medicine ball exercises connected directly to the stroke. And so by getting that strength on land and then seeing it transfer to the water, I think that was really, really a huge deal. And then I know, because Ed Moses and I would get into a little bit of a battle, with the internet and bragging about some of the things we would do, but we would take some of those medicine ball workouts, and I know Ed's the king of them, and just push them to a whole new level that almost borderline insanity, with jumping off of our knees and, some of those things.
I was just thinking about that.
I wouldn't recommend to somebody developing, but it's amazing how far you can push the stroke of breaststroke technically.
Oh yeah, and Barrowman, he would start from his knees and jump up, do a jump squat, come right back down onto his knees with his feet flared out like a breaststroke kick. And I'm like,
we all did that.
I was like, I couldn't ask my swimmers to do that. I'd break somebody's leg, it's just, but it was insane. His dryland work was unbelievable, and I agree with that. I think he definitely took that to a different level, and I think it's interesting you're talking about how the stroke has changed, in the last 25, 30 years, and more so than any other stroke. I mean, backstroke, you're not touching the ball in the turn anymore, but I mean, the dolphin kick on the pull out, the fact that you can go underwater with each stroke, and your head can sort of, so many things. I think as swimmers became more powerful, it was virtually impossible to do a dolphin kick, to do a pull out without a dolphin, or some body undulation. And with the breaststrokers lunging forward, getting the hands up out of the water and lunging forward, again, virtually impossible to do that without your head going underwater again.
And what was neat is seeing a lot of those things kind of transform. A lot of people don't realize that in 2000, the Japanese team did not win a medal at the Games in Sydney in 2000. And their national delegation from Japan was like, that's enough. We got to be better than this. And they sent like a bunch of people from Japanese swimming to the US and toured around, and they were visiting all of the best swimmers at the time. And what you see is between 2000 and 2004, all of a sudden Japan developed some pretty phenomenal swimmers. And if we watch their technique, the butterflyer looked almost exactly like Phelps with that low breath, mouth almost still in the water breath, and, you know, almost a similar body type. That butterflyer was swimming like Phelps. Well, Kosuke Kitajima
Yeah.
was swimming exactly like Ed Moses at the time.
And his breakouts were a lot like Phelps, though.
Well, that's the other thing that was interesting is we were all guilty of it. Okay. So everybody in that time frame from the late 90s, early 2000s were finding ways to put dolphin kicks in, knowing that there weren't cameras underneath the pool. And there were several practices where when we'd do a start and your body's surrounded by so many white bubbles, you can do anything in those bubbles because from above the water, you can't see it. And all the top level swimmers in the world at that time were trying to sneak as many dolphin kicks as they could where you couldn't see them under the water to gain more speed.
Well, and it's also interesting is that when you swim in major international competitions, swim in world championships, the Olympic trials, the Olympics, the amount of lighting that is required for the TV cameras, the officials only see glare. So the officials on deck cannot see anything at all. And what was fascinating is we now have the underwater cameras, and they have an official down in the cave, and this official is watching the race from below the water. And the official came out. I believe it was Ron Van Poel. He comes out and he's talking to the meet referee at the Olympic trials, and he's like, "Are you guys not watching these races?" And found out that like 30 to 50% of the male breaststrokers were all doing dolphin kicking it some way or another. Yeah. One breaststroker, literally the last 25 meters of the race, the breaststroke, he was way back, he was way behind. You know, some college kid who was out of shape had just swimming dolphin kicked the entire last 25 of the 100 or 200 breaststroke, and nobody, you just couldn't see it at all. And even like you think about, so it is interesting that how you're absolutely right, how, you know, and then so how do we adapt? And the backstroke turn used to have to touch your hand with the wall. Well, once they started doing that turn where you were just scraping the wall, the officials like, it's impossible with all the bubbles and all the splashing to see what's going on. So that's how the turn got the backstroke touching the wall got eliminated. And it's the same in the breaststroke. So, okay, can't beat them, join them. And there was some talk about allowing the underwater official to be able to make calls. And the problem was, and Jim Wood, who was the president of USA Swimming and recently passed away, sadly, but he was an advocate for you had to have above water officiating because that's what coaches see every day. So unless every swim team is going to be able to invest in cameras and coaches are going to watch swimming live from underwater to see what's going on, it's not fair to the athletes. Yes, there's athletes that can take advantage of that. But so it was very, very interesting of why we don't use underwater video. And again, when you're watching the race, they show us water. I think for breaststroke, they probably NBC is allowed to do that.
Yeah, so Kosuke probably took the brunt of it because he was clearly the world best consistently in that time frame, and he was the one out front, and he'd be the one you'd see taking those dolphin kicks first because he was in the frame. Like he was the only one in the frame, so you didn't see the other guys behind him taking the dolphin kicks, but they all were. It's just Kosuke had to get blamed for it because he was the one winning. But I guarantee you it didn't matter how good anybody was. Somebody was finding a way to create that undulation to get just that little bit more. And there's a lot of power involved, but I think that that's one of those things that force some new things in the stroke, but some truisms for me within the stroke is anytime I teach it or am reteaching it, especially to a new kid or a college athlete or somebody that I'm working with, we start with using their core and really making sure their core movement is timed with everything else without using their arms and their legs. And for me, the core is the muscles at the base of your neck, pretty much all the way to the top of your knees, and trying to make all of those little muscles work together. And then I add the kick, and then the last thing I add is the arms. And I think by doing that, you really learn how to be more efficient through your core and your kick, because in breaststroke, you want to pull water so bad. But I think finding that sweet spot of elimination and eliminating resistance through the water first, and then adding the power to it, you can build a really fast breaststroke that way.
Did you ever work with Bill Boomer? Because that's a lot of what he talks about in terms of the core.
I never understood a word Bill Boomer said, but yes, I was at the Olympic Training Center for a few national team camps with him. And he worked with us when I was at Auburn for a little bit. But yeah, I think there's a lot to that. And I think it kind of carries over to every sport. Is most of us aren't aware of how our core truly works, and not just core strength, but core balance.
Yes.
When we do a lot of core work, it's not sit-ups and crunches. Planks begin to adjust it, but really looking at finding ways to get your body off balance, and finding balance has developed the best core muscles for swimming, in my opinion.
I totally agree. I actually wonder sometimes if we should spend less time in the water and more time just developing balance and core strength out of the water. And again, I think some of the best, you're right. I mean, nobody does crunch anymore, but even to do a plank where you're, bringing your knees up to your opposite elbows, or doing some things where, and doing side planks and lifting your leg and doing whatever you can to create balance, to force those small stabilizer muscles to engage.
Yep.
And to build. And I agree. I think that core strength throughout the whole body is. I've never really thought about it from your neck down, but I guess I have in some ways, but never really thought about it. It's an interesting way that you put that.
But when you isolate that and you teach a swimmer to move their body without using their arms and their legs, and it becomes a dolphin motion, or a body dolphin. I call it a slinky motion because I like playing with slinkies as a kid. But think of your body being a slinky, essentially, from your neck all the way down to your knees, and just using your core to go through the water very slowly. And then you add like a kick, a dolphin kick or a breaststroke kick to that. Then you're really starting to move and feel good. And then your arms are like, it just clicks. And then you just have to find the timing and stroke rate that's best for you.
That's interesting. Are there any races like in your history or that stick out to you as like, wow, man, PD, annihilating the world record, that's an obvious one. But I mean, others that you think about like, oh man, that's a race that really sticks in my head.
Well, there's two. The one that I think, Pranoit trials in 2016 in the 200 breaststroke, the way he came home on that last 50 was textbook. I was really, really impressed with that. I think what Lily King does in the water, I love her fire and tenacity, but she's somebody who has also gone to the next level where people are scared to race her.
Right.
And when you're scared to race somebody, you've already got a leg up. But it's because she's just so tenacious and doesn't slow down. And I think that's another thing about breaststroke that I talked to Dave Durden quite a bit about, is swimming, regardless of the stroke, isn't about who swims the fastest. It's about who slows down the least.
Right.
And in breaststroke, trusting your body is still moving very fast in spite of not doing a lot, between strokes or as you're kicking, is one of the hardest adjustments for a lot of people who just want to, muscle their way through it and try to be the fastest, strongest.
It's interesting. I used to always tell sprinters that, when you watch a 50 free race, it looks like at about 35 meters that one swimmer just accelerates. And that swimmer isn't accelerating. They're just maintaining their speed. And the other swimmers are just falling back. I mean, and I think that's true. And in breaststroke, where there's so much resistance in that stroke, it's having that power and that ability to just keep your body moving and keep driving forward. And I agree. And, it's funny, you mentioned like Lily King's tenacity and that people are afraid to race her. And, the Last Dance, ESPN show about Michael Jordan. And now you're hearing all these former guys coming back and like, what's your favorite Jordan memory? Well, all my Jordan memories involve me being bad, so there are none. But it's like he was so intimidating that when they saw him on the court, they're like, oh my God, I don't want to play against this guy. So yeah.
And one of the other races that I think was one of the greatest swims to this day is when Ed Moses broke the 200 breaststroke world record in short course meters in Berlin. And he kept breaking it like every time he fell in the water. But the time he got down to is really pretty untouchable with what he did. Right. And one of the neat things that I learned from Ed was what we were talking about with that stroke is in prelims all the time, we'd be behind the blocks or whatever next to each other. And, we talked, we're competitors. And there was one time where he goes, I'll bet you I go 53 here and I won't take more than 20 strokes. And it was a 100-yard breaststroke. Okay? 100 breaststroke, he just goes, I'm not going to take more than 20 strokes and I'll bet you I go 53. And in my mind, I'm like, no, you're not. But sure enough, that's exactly what he did. That's exactly what he did. He took 19 strokes and he went 53.7, I think.
It's funny you say 20 stroke because Jessica Wagner, one of the drills we did with her to get her stroke count, we were swimming at long course and we were at down at Florida Atlantic University in Florida, and she had to go 50 meters. She had to go 10 50s, no interval, and she had to go 20 strokes. That's it. So I didn't care if she went 2 minutes on the 50, it didn't matter. And she couldn't get past the diving wall. She couldn't get more than like 38, 40 meters. And it was so frustrating. And she said, I'm never going to do 20 strokes with me. I said, I don't care. I just want you to try it here. So it's funny you mention it because it's, 20 strokes for 100 meters is like, it's like insane. I mean, for Cordis, that's too many strokes.
Well, yeah. And that's what's evolved is,
right.
a lot, as these guys have developed so much more efficiency in their stroke, Cordis strokes just got so much power and efficiency. It's really fun to watch. Those guys, yeah, I mean, the stroke count is still a factor though. And that's always something is you can't and everyone thinks even Petey just relies on his tempo. I guarantee you he's aware of his stroke count as well. And
Sure.
that's one of those things in breaststroke where you know what your sweet spot is. And if you know the number of strokes you're taking, you usually also know that your tempo is about where you want it to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think what's interesting, for years when we really started, God, I'm going back 20 years, when we really started focusing on, with video analysis and things like that, maybe 15 years ago. And the International Center for Aquatic Research started talking about, distance per stroke and stroke tempo. But nobody could answer what's the right number because it is different for every swimmer. You know that you need to have, you want to be as efficient as possible, but you can't lengthen out your stroke so much that it slows you down. So there is that sweet spot of what is your ideal tempo versus what is your ideal stroke rate and finding that balance. And so it's really, I think it's in all strokes, it's really, really important. And, but I think it's interesting how it's different for each swimmer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, cool. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. So we're going to jump off and then jump back on, and we're going to take a real quick break here. And when we come back, Dave and I are going to talk about, as I mentioned, Dave swam in the Paralympic Games. He was paralyzed in 2005 in a sledding accident. And with my daughter, we've talked a lot about, in fact, a quick story was that my daughter and my wife and I were in Dr. Scott Falsey's office at Craig Hospital in Denver. And we were talking, and at the end of talking about my daughter's case, it struck me that this is the #1 spinal cord surgeon in Colorado. So I wonder if Dave ever met him. And so at the end of the consultation, I said, "Hey, I don't know if you can answer this, doctor, but was Dave Denniston a patient of yours?" And he goes, "How do I know that name?" And he looks at his nurse, and she rolls her eyes, and she goes, "He's the guy that you did the surgery on, and he wanted to start swimming in 8 weeks. He wanted to be in a swim meet in 8 weeks, And so just talking about your tenacity and drive to get back into the sport despite this injury and my daughter's goal to get back into softball and things like that. So, like I said, we're going to take a quick break here right now. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about that kind of thing. So
sounds good.
All right. See you guys.